Land. From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Thank you very much. Monday's Richie Allen radio show just about to begin. Welcome to it. Hope you've had a good weekend and you've had a decent old Monday. Great to be with you as always. I look forward to hearing from you during the course of the next 2 hours.
It's the BBG, not the BBC. You're listening to the Richie Allen radio show, live from Salford in Greater Manchester.
It's the Richie Allen Show, broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Now, the terrific Dr. Vernon Coleman joins me around about 5:30 today, the first in a series of weekly visits by the great doctor. I won't say too much. You know that he gave up broadcasting on YouTube because of the censorship. I think he's moved to brand new Tube and will be there for the time being. But for the next few weeks, he's going to come on and shoot the breeze with me about COVID, about the lockdown and more besides. I'm delighted that he's agreed to do that. Dr. Vernon Coleman this hour. And in the second hour, Catherine Blakelock is back on the programme. First met her back in April. She's a very successful businesswoman and one of the founders, the founder of the Brexit Party. She was the first leader of the Brexit Party. Lots to talk about with Catherine, economic fallout of the lockdown, and of course, crunch time for Brexit allegedly. So Catherine Blakelock in the second hour of the programme. It is the BBG, not the BBC. Richie Allen from Salford with you till 7 o'clock UK time, that is. Welcome, one and all, to new listeners. If you're new, welcome. Nice to have you on board. If you're new people joining all the time, and you're very welcome regardless of what you think of me or the content. You're very welcome. Now, big news, huge COVID-19 news, huge. Phil Foden and Mason Greenwood. 3/4 of the listeners now scratching their heads. Who the bloody hell are they? Well, they're two footballers, two young, exciting footballers. One plays for City, the other for United. Well, they've been sent home from the England squad in Iceland because they broke coronavirus quarantine guidelines. Two young lads, 18 years old. What did they do? Well, they made their debuts in the game against Iceland at the weekend, but they broke COVID-19 guidelines and screwed up the bubble because the team was in a bubble, apparently. The two lads, the two teenagers, and they've been sent home. Here's Adam Parsons, Sky Sports guy, with the story.
What appears to have happened is that after England's game against Iceland, which was played behind closed doors on Friday, the two players then ended up in a room with a couple of Icelandic women. And it doesn't appear to have been the team hotel, but Snapchat images of this did appear. And quite clearly you can see it is Phil Foden from Manchester City and Mason Greenwood from Manchester United.
So they've been sent home for leaving the hotel to visit some girls. Now, in a world exclusive for the Richie Allen Show, I caught up with the young Manchester United striker Greenwood just before coming on air, and I asked him, what would he do now?
And now I'm having to yank myself off round the clock because I haven't got any proper sex with girls.
Yes, COVID doesn't just take away your sense of taste and your sense of smell. It can also give you an Irish accent and make you sound 50 years older than you actually are. Yeah. I'll continue to find opportunities to use that clip of Pat Mustard. Madness was everywhere today. Politicians have never had it so good ever. It's a joy to go on national television now if you're a politician. A joy. Why? I'll tell you why. Remember Eamon Holmes last Friday?
This is a time of national emergency. And as I know from myself at the start of all of this, you're not allowed to question the narrative on such things.
On COVID.
So there are restrictions on publications, there are restrictions on broadcasters.
There is, and that's a wonderful thing if you're a politician. Oh, fill your boots, man. Fill your boots, man. Are you going on telly in the morning? Of course I am. And they're not going to ask me any questions. I can say whatever I want. They're admitting it. It's a free hit to draw a cricket analogy. It's a free hit every single time you, as a government spokesperson or an opposition spokesperson, every time you are sent out to bat, get it, it's a free hit. Because they're not going to ask you any questions. How is he? Not out is the answer. National emergencies. Not allowed to question the narrative from one of the country's most experienced broadcasters. You heard it there, Eamon Holmes. We played this yesterday as well. We'll probably play it again. Sky News Breakfast for years. GMB for years. Good Morning Britain, that is. Experienced guy. We're silenced, he said. Matt Hancock was on LBC radios this morning. Matt Hancock. Don't blame it on the sunshine. Don't blame it on the moonlight. Do blame it on the good times. Blame it on the kiddies. Blame it on the kiddies, he said to LBC.
We are seeing problems of social distancing in some cases. The vast majority of people are still doing the right thing.
Is it age? Is there an age demographic here?
Yes, and this is really important point to get across. The rise in the number of cases we've seen over the last few days is largely amongst younger people.
Define younger.
Under 25s. Especially between 17 and 21. And the message to all your younger listeners and to everybody is that even though you're at lower risk of dying from COVID, if you're that age, if you're under...
Yes, even though you're at less risk of dying, yes, do go on, Health Secretary.
25. You can still have really serious... symptoms and consequences, and long COVID, where people 6 months on are still ill.
Long COVID
is prevalent amongst that population, amongst younger people.
One tends to stutter and stammer, as the Health Secretary is doing, when you are lying through your effing teeth. That's what happens. Historically, I've done courses I really have, on deception. On not to make myself a better deceiver, but to recognise deception in other people. The eye movements are a dead giveaway, but so is the stuttering and stammering and fucking up, essentially. The screwing up, the lying through his teeth about long COVID. Anything else?
Also,
you
can infect other people. And this argument that we've seen, that some people come out with saying, you don't need to worry about a rise in cases because it's younger people and they don't die. Firstly, they can get very, very ill.
Very, very ill.
And secondly, inevitably it leads to older people catching it from them.
Oh.
So don't infect your grandparents.
Don't kill Granny.
That's it.
Don't kill Granny.
And again.
Don't kill Granny.
Don't kill Granny, you little bastards. Don't go out. Don't live. Don't go on dates. Don't go to the hotel room of Icelandic... How could you say no if you're 18 years of age and you're a footballer and you're a strapping lad? You've got your pecs in all the right places, and your dangly bits are high and your testicles are not drooping down. You've got it all going for you. Icelandic girls, no, don't give up on all pretense. Don't give up on the idea of having a life, because you might kill your grandparents, said the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, to Nick Ferrari. Now, Nick Ferrari, here are the very next words from Nick Ferrari's mouth. He is as impotent as a Chernobyl tour guide operator. Nick Ferrari, here he is. Feast your ears.
So do you think, is it the view of you and your colleagues that it's the young people who aren't perhaps washing their hands as diligently as they might, using the hand gel? Those early days where everybody effectively seemed to buckle down, it's perhaps the youngsters who've lost their way.
The youngsters have lost their way! Oh, God, if anybody finds Nick Ferrari's balls, can they post them, please, to LBC Radio London? Ask him some questions, Nick. Jesus, man. Say to him, come on, will you? How long do you expect young people to just sacrifice their youth in case they give some germs to their grandparents? How long can it go on? It's the very least he could do. Absolutely useless, Nick. Hancock, he's useless, isn't he, Pat?
You have gotten me there. As useless as tits on a boar.
Tits on a boar. Any more from that interview?
Well, we've got. It is important for everybody to wash your hands, to follow the social distancing. It's hands, face, space, as in wash your hands, cover your face when appropriate, and stay 2 meters apart if you can, or 1 meter plus. And we're going, we will take action if people go to, big social events that are completely inappropriate, sadly, in a time of coronavirus.
We will take action if young people go to events. This is tyranny. Chuck and Piers Corbyn, who was invited to speak at an event on Saturday in Sheffield, into a jail cell overnight. A man in his 70s, a man of science, not a man of medicine, okay, but a man of science, an inoffensive man, a decent man, an eccentric man, some might say. I've had many conversations with him. I find him to be exceptionally bright. Chucking him into a prison cell, dragging him out of a shop on a high street in Sheffield. This is tyranny. And the media is not only silent on this, it's complicit in pushing the narrative. Nick Hancock, or Nick Ferrari even, sitting there, not a thing to say. I can't understand how they do that, This is the thing that will plague me. It will haunt me. For the rest of my days, how can they sit there and not jump in? Dreadful. Dreadful stuff. Ferrari, then the presenter, mentioned to Hancock that the Aussies were flying, Australia this is, in terms of stockpiling vaccines. They're brilliant, said Nick Ferrari. Well, says Hancock, we're way ahead of the Aussies.
Well, we're ahead
of them. We've got 30 million doses already contracted for with AstraZeneca. In fact, they are starting to manufacture those doses already ahead of approval, so that should approval come through, and it's still not certain, but it is looking up, should that approval come through, then we're ready to roll out. And in fact,
this year?
Well, the best case scenario is that happens this year.
This year, possibly, right?
Year. I think more likely is the earliest part of next year.
Wow.
But in the first few months of next year is the most likely. But we've also bought vaccine ahead of it getting approved from a whole different series of international vaccines as well.
Yeah. Approval has already been given, you see. They're indemnifying the manufacturers. If the travellers turned up at Matt Hancock's door and offered to sell him some vaccines, he'd buy them. Here's some medicine that has been rushed into production and not been trialled or tested properly. Oh, by the way, we've pre-removed your right to damages if the medicine kills you or injures you or the person standing fucking next to you. Still want it? I didn't think so. No thanks. Eamon Holmes said it. It's a free hit for the government now, for the World Health Organization lackeys, and for William Gates. In every media appearance, no journalism, it's dead, it's gone, it's buried. It's rotting in a lead-lined box, what remains of it. Richard Horton is the editor-in-chief at the Lancet Journal, with this hysterical horse shit on the Kay Burley show on Skype this morning, and it went unchallenged.
If you walk around cities today, I'm sure you see people are assembling, they're mixing, they're not wearing masks, they are not physically distancing, and the country right now is on a precipice. With children back at school, students going back to universities, people being encouraged to go to work, and with winter coming, we are in real danger if we don't get the messaging right that we will have a resurgence.
A resurgence. COVID-2, the revenge, coming to a cinema near you. Mad, eh? There's more of it too, unchallenged.
We have to accept and understand that this virus is with us. It's going to be with us for a long time to come. A vaccine is not going to be a magic bullet that suddenly takes all the risks and dangers away.
This is very important now. I could have grabbed 15 to 20 different audio bites from today's news where other men and women like Horton at the same time, because this happens, everything happens in lockstep. So when you hear a guy on Sky News telling you the way something is going to be, there are other guys and gals on other television and radio news programs saying the same thing. One of the things they've been keen to say today is, get your heads around this now, while there will be a vaccine, And while everybody should have it, it isn't going to change things back to pre-March 2020. In other words, not only do we expect you to have the effing vaccine that is untested, untrialed, and might make you grow a second head, or make your balls fall off, or make you prone to narcolepsy. Not only that, but the new normal, the new behaviours are here to stay. Hey? We want you to take a vaccine, but we're going to keep some of these changes to the way we go about our daily business.
And therefore, we are going to have to change our behaviours.
Yeah.
In order to live with the virus around us. But
I'm going to be honest with you now. I've never been a tough guy. I've never been a grandstander. Never in my life. He was on a Skype call to Burley. If I'm sitting in a studio with a wanker like him, and he starts telling me that I have to take a vaccine, but I've also got to change the way I live my life and live with the virus, I'm going to knock him out and walk out of the studio and go and have a pint. Shocking, this stuff. This is shocking stuff, this. You have men and women going on national television and radio threatening you and me every day of the week. And they're doing it, like I said earlier on, the cricket analogy, it's a free hit. Where's the journalist? Gone. They're gone. Eamon Holmes told you on Friday last week, we've been told not to challenge it. We've been told to facilitate it, to allow it to be vomited forth onto our programmes. And we have to sit there and keep stum and say nothing.
At the moment, those messages about the scale of the transformation in our society that's taken place, I don't think are being communicated anywhere near forcibly enough. And that's why people are relaxing.
We're not frightened enough, you see. We need to scare people more, says this goon who's the editor of the Lancet Journal. Is he? Or is he the editor-in-chief of the Lancet Journal? A goon! Masquerading as an expert. Oh, it gets worse than that. Jimmy Cranky herself making a daily appearance in front of the cameras to tell us how things are in Scotland. Jimmy has the answer. It's our fault, says Jimmy, that the virus is coming back. Our fault. It's our fault that infection rates are back on the increase. Our fault. Because when lockdown was lifted, we ran out the front door, whooping and jumping for joy, turning cartwheels, but we were supposed to close the bloody doors and windows and not release the virus too.
So we have a very definite trend at the moment. And in some ways, it shouldn't surprise us. In recent weeks, we have opened up most of our economy. We had to get some normality back to our economy because we know lockdown does other harm to people. But
that's an understatement, isn't it? We know that lockdown does other harm to people. It does far more harm than any virus ever could. But here comes, this is the blue ribbon winner for today.
But as we have released ourselves from lockdown, we've also released the virus from lockdown.
Amy?
What kind of fuckery is this?
What was that again, Jimmy?
But as we have released ourselves from lockdown, we've also released the virus from lockdown.
What?
But as we have released ourselves from lockdown, we've also released the virus from lockdown.
Who didn't close the fucking windows and the doors behind you as you walked out of your house on lockdown end day or lockdown is over day? Unchallenged. This is the Richie Allen Radio Show, live from Salford in Greater Manchester, September 7th. Welcome to the show. Again, if you're new, thanks for finding us. Thanks for listening to us. Don't forget hour 2, Catherine Blakelock, founder of the Brexit Party. Before that, Dr. Vernon Coleman. He'll be with me in about 8 minutes' time, and it'll be the first of regular visits to the show on Monday evenings. He's migrated his An Old Man in a Chair series to brand new tube. He put his first upload there yesterday. I think he's going to take a couple of weeks off while he goes back to work on a book that he's got coming out, and in that time he's going to spend a little bit of time with us as well. I'm looking forward to that. I really am, and I'm so glad that he graciously accepted that invitation.
Renowned healer Mark Bayersky travels the world to find the most unique and powerful crystals for self-healing. Since the ancient times, crystals have been used as healing tools. They hold a natural healing vibration and are highly charged in positive energy. Mark teaches how to channel the universal energy and transfer it to the crystal to activate its healing power. Each crystal is used for its unique ability to target a different physical or emotional challenge. Mark Bayersky is an author, healer, speaker, and founder of the Pure Energy Healing Academy. He shares powerful messages of inspiration and healing on his daily YouTube videos, reaching millions worldwide. Mark's crystals, healing oils, and incense sticks are most sought after by other healers. His collection is available online at www.markbayersky.com. His work is presented through Lemon House, a company that creates and curates consciously made gifts.
Welcome back. The very learned, the very gorgeous, the very talented, the brilliant Jean Ann Crowley in Cleggan tells me there's a book of Father Ted stamps in Ireland. I love Father Ted. That's the sort of thing I would collect, you see. I'm no philatelist, eh? Check out the big brain on Baldy. And I had no time to look that up either. I did know philatelist. I did know that. I do have my moments, don't you know? I'm not going to get into Alexei Navalny and that fairy story coming out of Germany. I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to get into shootings. I'm not going to get into any of that. There's a number of stories today bringing horrendous employment figure news. The Times ran a piece today that said more than half of Britain's small to mid-sized firms, listen up now, more than half of Britain's small to mid-sized firms have acknowledged that they will be leaving staff go when the furlough scheme ends in October. Now, I warned about this, didn't I? That while the government initially paid 80% of and then 70% of people's salaries while they were not working at home, I said ultimately when they go back, the business itself levied with all of that debt, right? The debt imposed upon it by the government's borrowing to sustain the employees, but also the debt that was incurred from not trading. I said this would destroy firms. Tens of millions of people are going to be out of work. God love them. People with mortgages, people renting places, upwards of £1,000 a month, mum and dad working, trying to pay for childcare, not got more than a month's wages in the bank as savings. The damage to Sturgeon cranky saying that we know that the lockdown has other effects on people. Yeah. Thanks for your tweets. There's a lot of them since the opening of the programme. At Richie Allen Show on Twitter. Hi to Chris, hi to Fuzz, to William Henderson in Scotland. How you doing, William? To IT Bird, to Stephen Hardy, to Tony, to RDC Landscapes, to Kat, to Sutty's Rehab. Thanks for the meme, mate. I really appreciate that. Hi to Liz Jones. Hi to Charlotte Burnley. Charlotte Binns even in Burnley. Yeah, it's a Monday. Mistake number one. Hi to Darren. How you doing, Darren? Darren says, Richie, a quick one to point out no surprise, my son goes back to school for 2 days last week, and lo and behold, he has been full of snot and cold. Lock us up for 5 months and the immune system retreats, and our youngest gets it too, he says Darren. Thank you, Darren, for the message. Right, we're going to take a tune then. And when we come back from that, Dr. Vernon Coleman will be on with me for the first, as I said, of a series of weekly visits to the programme. And we've become very fond of Vernon Coleman, haven't we? An incredibly learned, loquacious, verbose, national news GP, unblemished for many, many, many years. And a very humble guy with all of that as well. And he's been making a series of videos, a series of episodes of something called an old man in a chair, where he's addressed the camera 20-25 minutes at a time, and he's given an alternative, an expert alternative, to the government stuff that you hear on BBC and Sky News. And it's been incredibly welcome. In that time, he has challenged the health secretary. He has challenged Fauci in America. He's challenged Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance to appear on a forum with him somewhere to debate the merits or the demerits of locking down the country and the damage it's doing. And he has been ignored. Right. Tune coming up from Bob Seger then on the Richie Allen Radio Show, live from Salford, the BBG, not the BBC. This is terrific.
Just take those old
Hard to believe that Bob Seger is retired or has retired. He has retired, sadly for me. Old time rock and roll on the Richie Allen Radio Show from the Stranger in Town album. I'm a geek. It doesn't matter. I know it doesn't matter. I've already introduced my guest, so let's welcome him back to the programme. The website is vernoncoleman.com. Brand new tube is where to find him. The old YouTube channel is still there. An old man in a chair today becomes an old man on the phone. Made me giggle last night when he said, and I quote, "If Bill Gates is a scientist, I'm a former Miss World champion," or something to that effect. Vernon Coleman, welcome to the programme. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Richie. How are yourself?
I'm very well, and thanks for graciously accepting the offer to come and do this for a few weeks, or for as long as you like. You're very welcome to this parish. And excellent episode yesterday. You've migrated to brand new tube, and I believe that in the foreseeable future, that's where people can catch an old man in a chair.
As long as they do what they said and leave me alone. They've very kindly moved most, or if not all, of the old videos over there as well, which is brilliant. Because I'm not sure I could have done it. But the problem with YouTube was that they were taking them down almost as fast as I was putting them up, and threatening to take down the whole channel if I put anything else up that didn't agree with World Health Organization guidelines, which I don't feel comfortable in supporting the World Health Organization since it started taking its medical advice from Goldman Sachs, who are telling them what to do about masks, for example. Governments all around the world are now taking medical advice from Goldman Sachs.
Yeah.
I wouldn't take any sort of advice from these people, but there you go. That's what YouTube says. Well, bugger YouTube. I'm not staying with a platform which says that in order to stay on their platform, I have to lie and deceive and suppress the truth and do all the things that I've spent my life not doing. So stuff them. I'm off.
I watch your episodes. I watched yesterday's this morning, and I like to pick things apart, and I do look for inconsistencies, not so that I can embarrass the people I'm speaking with, but so I can challenge them. There isn't anything that you've been saying that isn't true. I'm not saying it's easy to find out. You did the work. It's excellent journalism, but it's there. The World Economic Forum, Davos, everything you said is true. Let me ask you this before. I want to play you a tiny bit of audio. Before I do that, how much of a shock is it to a man of your vintage to be... I don't think I've asked you this before. I don't think I've emphasised this. For you to make a film, to do it properly, to research what you're going to say, to think very hard about how you're going to communicate what it is you are going to communicate. How shocking has it been for you to see that to be summarily deleted by Google, YouTube? I can't imagine that has been easy for you, and it must have been a massive shock coming from the time, that you come from.
I can't believe what's happened in the way of suppression of freedom of the press. We've gone back several centuries to times of Ignaz Semmelweis and Dr. Snow, and almost back as far as Paracelsus. We've gone back in suppressing medical truths to something I find very difficult to understand, and also the way that the media generally is suppressing truths. It's quite extraordinary. I've been in the media for half a century, writing newspaper columns, and when I was a young lad, I used to make TV programs and radio programs, and nothing like this has ever happened. I mean, I've had fairly sparky conversations with editors, but I've never known anything like this, where whole ideas and facts and so on are just suppressed, and you're told that if you don't print rubbish, if you don't pass on the garbage which is being produced by these bizarre organizations, then you'll be banned completely. And this patronizing arrogance of YouTube, where they send all these emails. I didn't know I was banned for a week. What happened was I got up to the point where they were saying, if you do something else naughty, we will take your channel down. And then, because I'd been naughty, by which what that means is that I'd said things which were against the World Health Organization rulings, and we've already discussed that. When we got to that point, I realized that I had to just go somewhere else, because otherwise it was pointless. But what I also realised was that if I went before I was chucked off, they would take off the whole channel.
Yeah.
And any of the 80,000 videos, 80 videos that were left, including some nothing to do with COVID, on things like dementia and benzodiazepine addiction, all those would be taken off too. And I thought, well, I might as well leave those there rather than let them throw me off. I'll go. Because also I have the opportunity, if I want, to put up a signpost video of just a few seconds, if and when they finally allow me to put anything up again, just saying where subscribers can find me.
Brand new tube is where you'll find Dr. Vernon Coleman from now on. Let me play you 20 seconds of audio from this morning, last Friday. You're probably aware of it now, I'm sure you are. And some of our listeners won't be. This is this is a guy called Eamon Holmes. I mentioned him in the monologue. He's a very experienced presenter, Sky News, GMB, all the rest of it. And here he is speaking to an actress called Denise Welch. And Holmes basically lets the cat out of the bag.
This is a time of national emergency. And as I know from myself at the start of all of this, you are not allowed to question the narrative on such things. So there are restrictions on publications, there are restrictions on broadcasters, and there will be a lot of people saying that you are simply rabble-rousing, you're creating panic with all of this.
Now, Vernon, when I went to university, we had names for countries where governments instructed the media what the media could and couldn't say. What do you think of that?
I think it's absolutely shocking. The joke of the weekend was surely when the press, the national press in the UK, were complaining because demonstrators from some, I don't know where, demonstrators had blocked the newspapers from delivering the newspaper companies from delivering their papers. And the complaint was that this was an infringement of free speech. I nearly fell off my chair laughing. There hasn't been any free speech in the newspapers for months. They've just been pumping out government propaganda. It's quite bizarre what's going on, and the way the police have reacted. I think perhaps Piers Corbyn should actually say he's now from Black Lives Matter or exhibitionists, whatever they're called, because then they'll leave him alone. Or I tell you what, the funny thing was, they said that they could only have a demonstration of up to 30 people, but they allow rugby matches to go ahead, whereas 30 people on the pitch plus a referee, that's 31. Why don't they go around arresting all the rugby players? It's barking, absolutely barking. The only good thing that's really come out of all this, as far as I'm concerned, is that I've never known such solidarity. Those of us, and there are a lot of us, those of us who are in this world of truth and are fighting against all the lies, there's a great sense of community, I feel, and it's wonderful. I had no idea what was going on in social media. I've had a website forever since I first started them, but I never really did anything else. And then the minute I tried, I discovered I was banned from everything.
Banned from everything, pre-banned Vernon Coleman. There's something to be taken.
Banned before I started.
Yeah, your reputation went before you. For those of you who know of Vernon, but you don't know of his past, I'm going to drop in every now and then a couple of little nuggets about you, which I find to be brilliant. I grew up in Waterford, and everybody I knew was involved in trade unions, and I'm a big fan of trade unions and solidarity. And I love the fact that you took some flack back in the very early 1980s for protecting the right of confidentiality of your patients and not writing or certifying the reason or the medical reason they were ill. You just gave them a sick note to cover them for a couple of weeks. And I love that, Vernon. And that didn't sit well with bosses of companies, nor did it sit well with the government either, right?
That's why I left general practice, because they fined me and told me they were just going to continue to harass me and fine me. I put virus infection on about 2,000 sick notes because a couple of patients had asked me not to put their diagnosis. I remember a guy came in and he was depressed, and he worked for a big company with chain stores, and he said, if you put depressed on my sick note, I'll be fired. So obviously I just put something else. And then the government, the NHS said, well, you've got to put diagnoses on, otherwise you're in trouble. So I left. And then they changed the rules a bit later on and said you didn't have to do that.
Yeah,
so that was a good result, really.
It was a great result. It's a great story. And I want to play another little bit of audio. We're flying by the seat of our pants today. Dr. Vernon Coleman is our guest. We are going to talk more about the latest COVID developments. There's a guy called Richard Horton. You'll be aware, he's the editor-in-chief of the Lancet Journal. And he was on Sky News this morning. And he had this to say. You see, it's a lovely way, Vernon, in the absence of any of these cowards actually coming on programmes to stand over their claims and debate them. It's nice that I can play you a 30-second soundbite and then you at least can answer it and the listeners can make their own mind up. So this is editor-in-chief of the Lancet Journal, a guy called Richard Horton, speaking to Kay Burley today.
We have to accept and understand that this virus is with us. It's going to be with us for a long time to come. A vaccine is not going to be a magic bullet that suddenly takes all the risks and dangers away. And therefore, we are going to have to change our behaviours in order to live with the virus around us. But at the moment, those messages about the scale of the transformation in our society that's taken place, I don't think are being communicated anywhere near forcibly enough. And that's why people are relaxing, why they are mixing, and why they aren't practicing these basic messages, and why we are seeing 3,000 cases as we saw over the weekend. It's coming back if we're not careful.
So he said even with a vaccine, Vernon, even with a vaccine, we're going to have to accept a change in behaviours in the future anyway, and cases are on the rise.
I'm not surprised. Richard Horton, I'm delighted to say, doesn't like me at all. And he is the editor of the magazine, which I think I'm right in saying was the one that published the trial on hydroxychloroquine and said it was rubbish, and then they had to pull the trial. If it wasn't on hydroxychloroquine, it was something else. The trial was so bad that they had to pull it from and apologise, rather feebly. They had to apologise for it. The truth about the COVID-19 is, of course, that the number of people dying is actually less than the number of people who die of flu in an average sort of year still. And when you take off all the ones that they've exaggerated, it's quite absurd. The number of people who will have died of COVID-19 in the UK is less than the number of old people who die of the cold every winter. I don't remember ever seeing anybody make a big fuss about that and saying we must take blankets and give free cold to old age pensioners. This is one of the biggest scams in history. It isn't. This is the biggest scam in history, and it's reached a point where if you don't understand that it's a fraud, then there's something wrong with you, or you haven't been keeping up with what's going on, because the evidence is so totally conclusive. The government keeps making mistakes that look like mistakes, but they're not, except for the mistake when they diagnosed everybody as having COVID-19 if they'd tested positive for the coronavirus in the previous 4 months, so that even homicides were put down as COVID-19 deaths. That was absurd, and so eventually the UK ended up with more deaths than anybody else in the world, and they got a bit embarrassed. So they said, oh, well, we'll cut it to 28 days. You only died of COVID if you tested positive for it within the last 28 days. And yet even the government has admitted that the testing is so bad that half the time, but more than half the time, it's unreliable. It's wrong. There are more false positives than there are positives, and they're clearly using all the positives in order to bring in lockdowns. And yet they have admitted that the lockdowns are killing more people than the virus. And the virus is now relatively rare, and the number of deaths are falling dramatically. And I noticed that Horton talked about the number of positive tests. Well, that's absolute rubbish. They're doing more testing. Half the tests are false positives. Of course you're going to get more positives. What they should be looking at is the number of deaths. And the number of deaths has fallen so fast and so far that it's quite rare now for anybody to die, seriously, properly die of COVID-19. And instead they're doing all this scare stuff, saying that people going to university are going to be the new care homes problem. People died in care homes because they were pushed there with a flu-like illness, and when they got there, nobody was protected. Most of the people there died because they weren't fed properly, they weren't given any fluids, and in a lot of countries the staff had all run away. How can that be similar? The people in those care homes, because they were in care homes, by definition, they had comorbidities. They had heart disease, cancer, respiratory disease, all sorts of things. So, of course, there was a bigger death rate. To say now that there's going to be a second wave because people going to university might go back, and in fact, most of them aren't going to university, the poor sods. They're going to have to do it on the phone or over the internet or some bizarre way.
Let me argue with you, Mike. Let me argue with you for once today.
Please do.
Let's have a Barney. I was listening to somebody speaking on Sky today. Again, I think it was an academic from Scotland, and he was making the point that, okay, youngsters are not likely to get it, and he was kind of along the lines that you've been speaking there. But he said the problem we have is there are a lot more people than we think, younger people, living with older people. They're actually living under the same roof as them, particularly in areas, in more built-up areas, in more socio-economically deprived areas. And that's a problem, he said. And we've got to be honest about that. So he was kind of accepting the argument that it's a bit unfair to tell the youngsters, don't kill granny and don't go to the pub and, isolate. But he said, you might say it's unfair, but so many of them are living at home with their elderly relatives, and that's a problem. So how do you address that?
Well, firstly, we didn't do anything much when people were dying of flu last year. Elderly people have always died of flu because obviously the illness added on to whatever it was that was wrong with them in the first place makes it more dangerous. That's the first thing. The second thing is that if old people who have illnesses are vulnerable, and for the first time in history we really want to protect them, then what we do is we tell them to wear masks, and we tell them to use hand sanitizers all the time, as long as they don't use one of the 150 sanitizers which the FDA has declared to be too dangerous to use, and we tell them to sustain social distancing rules. What we don't need to do is to tell all the people outside to do all these daft things, because all these things are destroying our society for no reason whatsoever. And we've got this bizarre situation where kids in school are being punished. They're being told that they can't smile, play, touch, laugh, sing, or do anything else half the time. They can't even learn. If they fall over, small children, if they fall over at school, then they aren't allowed to have anybody come and help them or comfort them or put a plaster on a cut or whatever. They have to ring for a relative. The teachers and the other children aren't allowed to go near them. What sort of society is that? And pray tell me, how does that help protect old people in their own homes? It doesn't. It's nonsense.
The psychological damage, we'll talk about that in a second. You can find Vernon, Dr. Vernon Coleman, at vernoncoleman.com. Please check the website out. Bookmark it there. Get his books. My mate John Parsons in Salford, Irish John's a very good personal friend of mine. His birthday was yesterday. Belated happy birthday, John. And he received a copy of one of your books, Vernon. I've got a picture of it here, and he was delighted to get it. He received a copy of Coming Apocalypse by Vernon Coleman. He's delighted. He just tweeted that. A lot of tweets about this conversation on Twitter now. Vernon is not on Twitter, as he said earlier on. He was pre-banned. I'm kind of jealous. I'd love to be pre-banned. It means they're doing something right. Just before Vernon comes back in, here's that Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, Jimmy Cranky herself, speaking today from Edinburgh.
So we have a very definite trend at the moment, and in some ways it shouldn't surprise us. In recent weeks we have opened up most of our economy. We had to get some normality back to our economy because we know lockdown does other harm to people. But as we have released ourselves from lockdown, we've also released the virus from lockdown.
As we released ourselves, we also released the virus. Did you not close the door behind you, Vernon? How now? You see
where
this?
Where do they find these people, and where do they find these bizarre sound bites? That is such gibberish, isn't it? I mean, does she suggest that the virus couldn't get through the window? I don't know. It's absolute rubbish. The thing is that there's so much bizarre. Do you know the infant mortality rate in England went down by about 30% during the lockdowns? So what was the reason for the fall in the infant mortality rate? I'll give you three choices. One, was it because they stopped people going for a walk in the park? Two, was it because they stopped people sitting on the beach having a picnic? Or three, was it because they stopped giving small children loads of vaccinations? It's one of those, but I can't think which one.
Yeah.
The whole world has gone potty. And in America, 62% of Americans are now afraid to express any political views because they were so worried about the censorship. But one thing that I did see, another survey in America, 44% of Republicans are genuinely worried and genuinely believe that Gates wants to put microchips, nanochips in his wonder vaccine. 44%, nearly half. The number with Democrats is much smaller, not surprisingly, because they're all Clinton-type supporters.
Yeah.
But that is an astonishing figure. And what was it I saw? Over 500,000, 600,000 Americans have signed a petition to President Trump to ask for Gates to be tried for all sorts of crimes against humanity. And I'm not surprised. It's just astonishing. Everywhere you look, the facts, all the facts, are on our side, by which I mean those of us who disapprove of the way the government has turned a potential small, ordinary problem into a massive. They've got hysterical. It's become a panic for absolutely
nothing.
No reason. The BBC, that wonderful organisation, the BBC, that was a satirical comment in case anybody quotes it. The BBC had a big story on its pages the other day saying that 25 million people have now tested positive. Well, what they didn't tell us is that 1 billion people tested positive in that they had the flu. And I could give you the names of probably 500 to 1,000 eminent doctors around the world who now say that the death rate, the mortality rate, which is what matters after all, the mortality rate with COVID-19 is almost exactly the same. And there's a hint for you, is almost exactly the same as the mortality rate with the flu. So we don't lock down everything. We don't close down schools. We don't close down businesses for the flu every year. Otherwise, there'd be no economy left.
No economy.
So you have to assume that there's something underhand going on. And once you start thinking there's something underhand going on, then you have to look and ask yourself, why? What the devil's happening? Who's benefiting from this? Who gains? And I have to say that the policemen who are going around doing bizarre things now really ought to stop and think, when Agenda 21 and the various ramifications of that come into play, will I be one of the special protected ones? Will I and my family be protected? Or will we merely be drones, fodder, the same as everybody else? Will we become just more slaves? The people who are wearing masks, all these pretty masks, and they wear them in the street where they don't have to at all, all these people wearing pretty masks, it occurred to me, are just like the people, slaves, who decide, oh, well, I'll paint my chains with nice, pretty colours, and then that'll be okay. They're mad, these people. Don't they understand that what they're doing is being part of their own enslavement? And the idea of seeing people at Black Lives Matter demonstrations wearing masks, which is part of the enslavement process, is just
beyond
hysterically bizarre.
I feel sorry I hear you loud and clear about ordinary people like me and my neighbours. But you see, when people find an old man in a chair, or when they find independent radio programmes, they generally do so by accident. And prior to that, I'm not teaching you how to suck eggs, you know this. They are exposed non-stop to the crap from the BBC and Sky, and they're genuinely terrified. Before we talk about the psychological effect on children and what might be behind this, I've got to not so much play devil's advocate, but you, in recent episodes of An Old Man in a Chair, you've analysed brilliantly the influence of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You've laid it all out there. Again, you are dealing with facts, not with conjecture, so I can't challenge anything that you said. You made a very interesting point a few moments ago about people believing in nanobots going into the vaccines. Now, I've had men and women on this programme over the years who've talked to me about such technology, and I believe it does exist and it has been developed. However, your critics might say, Vernon, where on the record has Bill Gates or anybody connected with Bill Gates suggested when they inject somebody with a vaccine against the flu or against COVID that they also inject into the person nanobot technology? And for the listeners who are screaming at me now, I'm doing my job. I know these things are around and I know that there are people who want to do these things, but I'm not sure there's any evidence of Gates ever publicly stating such a thing. And I don't know if you've come across any such evidence either.
I think I've seen him say that and certainly he's got a company that makes nanotechnology and has been involved in it. Now, they wouldn't say that, obviously, because they want to get everybody vaccinated. What is also important is, why do you want to vaccinate 7 billion people with a vaccine that will not have been properly tested by admission? They're not going to have time to properly test it. You're going to give it to 7 billion people when I've documented quite extensively the risks that involves and the number of times that things go wrong. And how can they expect us to believe that that they're going to do this in an honest and honourable way when you look at the past record, not only of the drug companies, but of Gates himself and his vaccine attempts. And it was actually admitted the other day, and I put this in a video weeks ago, but it was actually admitted the other day, even by The Guardian, friends of Mr. Gates. It was admitted that much of the polio in the world at the moment is the same strain as the polio vaccine.
We've momentarily lost Vernon. We lost you momentarily for a couple of seconds.
Hello?
Yeah, we're back. We lost you just for about 5 seconds, that's all. We didn't miss anything.
The Gates vaccine for polio is the type of polio that is now causing all the problems around the world. So the thing you have to think about with vaccines is risk-benefit. That's always the thing with any sort of drugs. And I object strongly to the term anti-vaxxer, because it suggests that you're some sort of Luddite lunatic. The fact of the matter is that if you look at the risk-benefit with vaccines or whatever it is, any drug, you want to know that it's going to be beneficial to you. I remember having a conversation years ago when people like that spoke to me with the boss of a drug company, and I questioned him about the number of deaths with a hay fever medication, and I can't remember what it was, but it was something like 12 people had died taking this hay fever medicine. And I pointed out to him that if I had a really deadly disease and they gave me a drug that would give me a really good chance of living, then I wouldn't mind too much if it also gave me a chance of dying because of it. But if I have hay fever, I don't want to take a drug that might kill me. And that's the same argument that I would use on vaccines. If you're going to have a vaccine that might kill you, I want to know that the vaccine is really important in saving my life. And most of these vaccine promotions are actually for trying to protect the community and not protect the individual. So they're taking risks with individuals' lives in order to make profit from the community. Now, when you look also at the risks that are involved, which are massive, and you realize the amount of money that's been paid out to people who've been made ill, you realize just how bad the whole system is. When the pro-vaxxers are enthusiastic about all vaccines all the time, and they don't want them to be tested. There are no tests done long term. There are no tests done to see whether vaccine A goes with vaccine B or interferes with vaccine C, or what happens if you're on some medication of some other sort. And to get back from a rather roundabout way to the nanotechnology, whether they are going to put something in the vaccine, and whether that's going to be something nasty by itself or something that's going to be triggered by some other outside force, I don't know, because no one's said. All I've looked at is the possibilities of what they can do, and why won't somebody come forth and actually debate these things and say this is what we do. Because I remember you saying some time ago that people like the BBC have actually got a preordained list of things which are now beyond debate. You aren't allowed to debate climate change. You aren't allowed to debate vaccination. By default or by decree, these things are wonderful and we must accept them. Whatever happens, we aren't allowed to debate any vaccination. All vaccines are good according to the people who are promoting them. And time again, we get to the same people who are in government, who are in agencies, in big jobs, who have links of one sort or another. And my trust in these people is nil. And I think there's the more positive aspect of all this is that we have to encourage people to ask questions and to think about it. And I'm delighted we started putting leaflets on the website that people can print out. And I know quite a lot of my readers are going to the print shop, printing out a leaflet, going to the print shop, printing a few thousand and stuffing them in letterboxes. That's how we're going to win this, by making people aware and just giving them the basic, simple facts. The number of deaths in the UK from COVID-19 is about the same as the number of people who die from the flu,
and that's true,
and it's a lot less number of old people who die each year because it's cold and they can't afford to keep warm because they're paying the BBC TV license and heaven knows what else. That's the way I think that we'll do it, is person by person by person, by trying to spread, because the country and the world are divided into two at the moment. On the one hand, there are those of us who know that there's something bad going on, and we're well aware of the facts, and we're frustrated and angry. Well, I am anyway. And on the other hand, there are people who only get their news from the BBC or the Daily Mail and the Guardian and whatever rubbish, and they believe what they're being told because they don't realize it's cognitive dissonance. They don't believe that anybody could lie that much. They don't believe that it's possible. They think, I'm still fighting to have the Spectator put right a quote where a month ago they said, or one of the writers there said, millions around the world are dying of COVID-19. When you have rubbish like that being published, and an enormous number of Britons still think that millions of Britons have died of this disease, that it's a plague. It's not a plague. It is not true that millions of people have died of it. It's a fairly ordinary flu-level disease, both by the risk of getting it, the risk of dying from it, and in every other respect. And yet the media, the papers and the television will not allow anybody to go on and talk and be interviewed. I saw the program with Denise Welch, and I thought she was brilliant.
Very
and
good.
I saw the program with Piers, and I thought he was with Piers Corbyn, with Morgan and Dr. Hilary Jones. The last time we went to buy curtains, by the way, we saw some curtains that were recommended by Dr. Hilary Jones. I thought that just about sums him up. They won't have a doctor on to talk to Dr. Hilary Jones. Oh no, but they'll allow him to give Piers Corbyn, or try to give Piers Corbyn a hard time, which is desperately unfair, because Piers is brilliant. I think I'm a great fan of his, a great admirer of his, and I think he's wonderful, but he would be the first to admit he's not a doctor, he's not medically trained, he can't possibly argue about some of the things that, say, Hilary Jones might want to argue with him about. So why don't they allow a doctor, of whom there are now many, to come on with Hilary Jones, Piers Morgan, and whoever, and actually confront them? That would be probably the nice thing to do.
We'll never again see.
Let me just go back one more time, because I've just remembered. There is some research. Microchips. The drug delivery technology is proven to be perfectly possible, and I believe that it's very, very likely. It's possible. They've tried it out Why have they tried it out if they're not
If they
going
didn't
to
want to do it. You're right, the technology is there. And on the police, of course, Boston Dynamics, to name one, have got robots now that can run at 25, 30 miles an hour down the street that can arrest people. I've said to a policeman in Salford, I had a very polite conversation with him. I said, in 10 to 15 years, son, I said, you won't have a job. I'll tell you what we'll do next time you're on. We're not going to go yet. We've got 5 minutes left. I want to stay with vaccines, if you don't mind. And next time we can talk about child health and child psychology next Monday. We do have Dr. Vernon Coleman with us every Monday at 5:30. We'll shoot the breeze for 40-45 minutes on all of these issues. He's writing a book at the moment. He'll be back in a couple of weeks doing An Old Man in a Chair. We'll call it the second season premiere, which will be on brand new tube. But staying with the vaccines, please listen to the Health Secretary Matt Hancock speaking to LBC's Nick Ferrari today.
Well, we're ahead of them. We've got 30 million doses already contracted for with AstraZeneca. In fact, they are starting to manufacture those doses already ahead of approval, so that should approval come through, and it's still not certain, but it is looking up, should that approval come through, then we're ready to roll out. And in fact,
this year?
Well, the best case scenario is that happens this year. I think more likely is the earliest part of next year, but in the first few months of next year is the most likely. But we've also bought vaccine ahead of it getting approved from a whole different series of international vaccines as well.
Nobody would buy hundreds of millions of doses of a vaccine unless they were pretty sure that it was going to be approved, Vernon.
Absolutely. Isn't that disgusting? We don't bother to test it, but we're buying it all at taxpayers' expense. I repeatedly challenged Hancock to debate with me about the value of vaccines, and because they wouldn't respond to that, I tried them with a bet the other day. I put a bet inserted a bet into a video and on the website, 100,000 quid. But, Mr. Hancock, 100,000 quid, I'm betting that you cannot prove that the vaccine, you cannot provide clinical evidence before you start flogging it that it's 100% safe and 100% effective, because they won't be able to. I mean, the money's safe. They won't be able to prove that it's safe in the future because they haven't got the faintest idea, because with vaccines, if you're going to have a new vaccine, you have to have long-term tests. People in the industry are tearing their hair out in astonishment at this. I saw a letter the other day from a guy who'd worked in the drug industry for a long time, and he could not believe what they're doing, that they're actually going to buy vast quantities of a vaccine, they've cut out some of the preliminary tests. They'll never be able to do long-term tests because a lot of the time with vaccines and drugs, you don't know what side effects, what serious side effects are going to occur until, say, a year afterwards. So they've got this vaccine, they've still not made it, and he's talking about sticking it into millions of people's bodies. And the DNA, RNA vaccine, I've no doubt, which is going to genetically modify those people forever, and their children, and their children's children, in perpetuity. And they're going to put this vaccine in. They cannot possibly know what's going to happen in a year's time, because they can't possibly have tested it in a year's time, because they're doing it now. They're making it now. They're going to do these short-term tests, and then they're going to dump it in all these people. You'd have to be mad to let them put that vaccine into your body, knowing what the risks are. Just look on my website, or there's no monetization. I don't make any money out of these things. I always keep saying that because I'm always pushing people to go and look at the website or read watch the videos and stuff. But the fact is that if you look at the past record of GlaxoSmithKline or AstraZeneca or Pfizer or any of these people, you look at their past record and you think, woohoo, and they're not even testing it properly. No, thank you. But they've been fined, GlaxoSmithKline have been fined billions, not millions, billions, for doing all sorts of, let's say, naughty things with vaccines. Even the Chinese fined them for, I think it was bribery.
Yeah, bribery.
And the BBC said, oh, well, GlaxoSmithKline must learn not to do the bad things. They didn't say this is a bloody evil company, don't touch anything they make. They've tried to bribe people. They said, oh, if they're going to export and deal with foreign people, they must learn how to do this properly. I couldn't believe it. That's the wretched BBC who doesn't seem to understand. I got a reply from my complaint to the BBC when the BBC reported on the last Trafalgar Square rally. What the BBC said was that there were going to be pseudo-scientists there. Well, a pseudo-scientist is someone who's pretending to be a scientist but isn't, obviously. And there were some very well-qualified scientists there. And I complained to the BBC about the girl who'd written the piece. And the BBC wrote back and said, nothing wrong with that, we can say that. Unbelievable.
It's a lie.
Unbelievable. Well, okay, all people working for the BBC are lunatics. Okay, I can say that because obviously we're allowed to say anything now. The rules have disappeared. It's madness. The BBC, the arrogance of these people, the sooner they get defunded, the better. I delight every month when I get my letter from them saying, you haven't paid your license fee, we're going to be coming round and doing nasty things to you. And they send these wonderfully nice letters every month. They've been sending them for years. And you think, well, why are you wasting all this money? Why are they now harassing all these poor pensioners over 75? I was really looking forward to getting my free TV license, by the way. I haven't quite got there yet. And now they've taken I'm sure they did it on purpose. They've got all these old age pensioners. Are they really going to send them to prison?
Yeah.
Is the BBC really going to send 1,000 OAPs in their 80s and 90s to prison? Can they imagine what that's going to do to their popularity? Most people in this country, I think it was 80% of people in this country, don't trust the BBC anymore, and quite right too. It's a crooked organisation. How the hell did I get onto the BBC?
From the ground up. Next week we can get into more of that. We can certainly talk about child welfare at this time because a lot of people on Twitter are saying they'd like you to speak on that. You have been listening to Dr. Vernon Coleman, retired obviously, but he's not retired because he's still writing and publishing a hugely successful author, of course, hundreds of millions of sales, newspaper columnist and distinguished general practitioner for many years. Go to Brand New Tube and subscribe to his new channel on Brand New Tube, right? You'll see yesterday's upload there. He's still on YouTube for the time being, and you can see all of those old, not so old because it's been a few months, but you can see those earlier episodes of an old man in a chair where he talks about DNA, RNA vaccines, where he talks about the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It's a brilliant series. It really is. Thanks for doing this. I look forward to this now next Monday, and I'll continue to look forward to it as long as you want to do it. So all I can say is VernonColeman.com, by the way. Check the website out. Thanks for your time today, Vernon. Have a great week, and I look forward to speaking to you next week.
Pleasure, Richie. My delight.
Brilliant. The wonderful Vernon Coleman, Dr. Vernon Coleman, live from his home this evening. We'll do it again next Monday at 5:30. And all of these conversations we have will be on YouTube, of course, iTunes, Spotify, and everywhere else. Great to have him on the programme. Today it is 13 and a half minutes past the hour. It's time for a tune, for a bit of a break, I think. Here's Manchester's Buzzcocks. Pete Shelley, God rest him, rest in peace, Pete Shelley. Back in a few minutes. Catherine Blakelock as well. Yes, Buzzcocks on the Richie Allen Radio Show. Thank God we got to see Buzzcocks a couple of years ago. 2.5 years ago at Albert Hall in Manchester. Took the future Mrs. Allen down. No, she wouldn't be the biggest punk fan now of all time, but she had a cracking night watching Buzzcocks there. Of course, Pete Shelley no longer with us. Manchester's finest. Indeed. Hi to Hilda Gardner. And thanks to Melissa Oatley. Hope I got that right. Let me just have a squiz there. Excuse me. Thanks to Marissa Oatley, who sent a very nice email to the programme. I won't read it out, Marissa, because we don't read out compliments to ourselves. But you said a nice thing about the radio show. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. The radio show is here, and it's only here for one thing and one thing only, to give a platform to long discussions, detailed discussions, with people whom are not, sadly, seen or heard on the national media. That's the fact. Forget about the presenter. No modest guy here. I'm not modest, hardly. But it's not about me. It never was and never will be. It exists only so that we can hear from people. It's a tragedy, of course. He should be on the Good Morning Britain sofa opposite Dr. Hilary Jones. Of course he should. It's how it once was. This is how it used to be. I used to produce similar type radio shows where you would get people on and find the contrary person, find the complainer, find the disagreeer, but who had the letters behind his or her name. That's what we would have done back then. We would have went, is there any doctors saying that this lockdown is a load of bollocks? That's what we would have done. And we would have found them. And we would have said, right, let's get a debate going. But not today. I'm not going to play the clip again. You heard Eamon Holmes. Pressure has been brought to bear on the country's national and commercial media to not challenge any of it. Again, I wish you could be in my shoes just for 5 seconds to understand what it feels like for me. Ask Jean-Anne Crowley on Facebook. Jean-Anne, overachieving fecker, has done everything you could ever do in the media. Produce, present, act, actress, write for national newspapers. She's the same as me. She can't believe it. I can't believe it. What's going on? But that's where we are. And that's what we try to do. Of course, we'll never reach the audience numbers of the BBC or other national media. But we reach enough people. Hi to Susan as well. Just waiting for Catherine Blakelock to say hello. I might have to take another tune, actually, because she's not waved at me yet. We're not connected just yet. I might take another tune and give her a call on the old dog and bone, which, of course, I've conveniently switched off here in the studio. The wonderful Maria Heller, with a voice that could cut glass, and with gorgeous piercing blue eyes that could kill a man at 1,000 metres. Brilliant journalist. Maria Heller will be on the programme tomorrow as well. And I'm hoping to... I won't mention her. But my mate Joe Boddington has been putting me in contact with people that I hope will be on the programme this week. And I also, as well, want to fit a phone in somewhere for 90 minutes where we can get you ranting and raving on the phone to me or on Skype to me about whatever the bloody hell you want to rant and rave about. Right. Okay. Let's have Rod Stewart, The Killing of Georgie. Right? This'll buy me a few minutes while we get Catherine Blakelock on the radio show. Richie Allen Radio Show. Oh yes, right. Broadcast tonight from Salford in Greater Manchester, Europe's most listened to independent radio show. Presented by me, the BBG.
In these days,
yeah, I realised last year that I was old. Back in 2019, I realised it was over. I was at Rod Stewart in Manchester at the arena with the oft-mentioned herself indoors, Caroline, and found myself completely unconsciously having the time of my life dancing around and singing the Rod Stewart songs, the repertoire. And I looked around and saw a lot of ladies that were 25 to 30 years older than me, and I knew. I looked at herself and I said, I'm feck now. I'm gone. That's it. It's over. How you doing, Phil Restino in Florida? Big fan of The Killing of Georgie 1 and 2. How you doing, Phil? And I want to say hi to Scott Rennie, who caught the tail end of my conversation with Vernon Coleman, ordinarily listens live and wants to know where he can get it. Come here, Scott. Come here. I'm probably saying this for the 17,000th time. When this programme ends, it goes to Podomatic.com. It automatically goes to iTunes and Spotify. And then about 2.5 hours later, it magically appears on YouTube as well. The whole fucking thing. Minus the music. Alright. Alright, I'm not saying it again. The next person who asks me, I'm going to find you. And I'm going to do unspeakable things to you. It's 28 minutes past the hour. Catherine Blakelock hasn't signed in yet. That's okay. Shit happens and then you die, as the old saying goes. I hope we do connect with her today. Something must have come up for her not to let me know. The founder of the Brexit Party, very successful businesswoman, wanted to get into a number of things with her. Obviously, the business effect of the lockdown. Told you earlier on, half of the UK's small to mid-sized firms have conceded that when the furlough scheme ends, they will be leaving staff go. This is a tsunami to come. It's a tsunami to come. We'll talk more about that in the coming days, no doubt. So while I chase her up then, I will be back with you in around about 2 minutes' time.
Thanks to you, The Richie Allen Show is the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. Show your support for this unique broadcaster by making a regular financial contribution. Just the price of a cup of coffee each month will make a massive difference. Visit richieallen.co.uk for details.
Renowned healer Mark Bayersky travels the world to find the most unique and powerful crystals for self-healing. Since the ancient times, crystals have been used as healing tools. They hold a natural healing vibration and are highly charged in positive energy. Mark teaches how to channel the universal energy and transfer it to the crystal to activate its healing power. Each crystal is used for its unique ability to target a different physical or emotional challenge. Mark Bayersky is an author, healer, speaker, and founder of the Pure Energy Healing Academy. He shares powerful messages of inspiration and healing on his daily YouTube videos, reaching millions worldwide. Mark's crystals, healing oils, and incense sticks are most sought after by other healers. His collection is available online at www.markbayersky.com. His work is presented through Lemon House, a company that creates and curates consciously made gifts.
This is The Richie Allen Show, the most listened to independent news radio show in Europe.
And it's 6:30. If you've just joined the programme, you missed Dr. Vernon Coleman. VernonColeman.com. He's on brand new tube at the moment. That's run by a gentleman based in Blackburn, I understand. I put a tweet out today asking for some information on it. I'd already gotten some basic information with a company name and a company address. I'm not that thick. I'm not that tick, you know. I can do that much. Company's house and all of that. But I didn't have a name. For no other reason than I wanted to know, really. I don't have any plans to begin putting my show on a video sharing platform because it's a radio show. The YouTube thing began back in 2014 when this program began. And initially, my mate Aaron Calland, my good mate Aaron Calland, it must be said, if you're listening, Aaron, hope all is well, mate up there in Bury, began putting it on YouTube, and then we got into the habit of doing it. And the channel got a lot of subscribers very early on. We had over 90,000, approaching 100,000 subscribers, as you know, and then that was deleted, and I didn't really care very much. But we, just out of force of habit, we just kept putting the videos up there. But eventually that's going to end, the uploading onto YouTube. And I don't have any plans to use another video hosting platform because it's a feckin' radio show, you understand. And as it's a live radio show and it then goes to podcast, I mean, we do enough. By we, I mean I, because there is nobody else, it's just me. Podomatic, Spotify, iTunes, all of that. So that's why I don't put it on BitChute. That's why I don't use brand new tube. It's a pain in the arse. And there's no real gain for me in doing it. In terms of listener numbers, it doesn't really make much of a difference to me to do it. If I was making a video show, and in the very near future, I may very well do a weekly video thing with Hayden Hewitt, well then, of course, we will use a video sharing platform. But the radio show, there's nothing in it for us, you know? You know? Okay. Quick headline rundown then. I don't think we're going to get Catherine Blakelock today. It's not looking good. Due to be with me at 6:20. She's not there. Ah, well. Shit happens. I didn't mention this in the monologue, but I should have mentioned it. Mea culpa. The inquiry into the Manchester Arena bombing, which happened on the 22nd of May 2017, 3.5 years ago or something like that. The inquiry began today in Manchester Magistrates court. Now, you will know that Salman Abedi has been blamed for it. Okay? It is alleged that he, having only recently returned to the country, strapped a explosive pack onto his body and then made his way to Manchester Arena, where a pop concert was taking place, and blew himself up. Okay? And very recently, you will know that his brother, having been extradited to the UK, sent back to the UK, his brother was found guilty of being complicit, and he'll never see the light of day. That's where we are. So today, Paul Greeny QC opened the inquiry, and he read out the names of the 22 people who died on the 22nd of May 2017. And when all of that took place, a number of people got in touch with me, credible people, and they said, Richie, numerology, numbers, are hugely important to the people behind the Orwellian agenda unfolding in front of our bloody eyes. 22. It's a big number. The 22nd of May, 22 people dying and all of that. So that inquiry began today. Now, you might remember, around about the time of the bombing, I was contacted by David Shaler, ex-MI5 agent. Now, I like David Shaler. I've always enjoyed speaking with David over the years. And David is a very thick-skinned guy, so he wouldn't mind me saying, if he's listening, that he has a lot of critics. A lot of people who don't believe him. David left MI5 and went on the run with a woman called Annie Mashon many, many moons ago, after he and she blew the whistle on some of the activities being carried out by MI5, not least assassinating people overseas, but also keeping files on allegedly left-leaning politicians here in the UK. They went on the run, they feared for their lives. Now, I like David, but a lot of people who listen to this programme would say, yeah, Richie, I think he's a bit of a shill or a bit of a double agent or whatever. Well, he might be. He might be. But when he's been on my programme, he's been talking about very interesting things, and the things he has claimed on my programme, most notably the thing he claimed about the arena bombing, was demonstrably provable. Now, what David Shaler did on the Richie Allen radio show, not to brag because he could have went to any other independent radio show and said it. It wasn't my journalism. But he came on my programme and he said, Richie, you won't believe it, Richie, you won't believe it. I said, what? What, David, I said? He said, well, Salman Abedi's father is a guy called Ramadan Abedi. And he worked for MI6 for years. Of course, your ears prick up straight away. And he was known as Agent Tunworth. The father of the bomber was Agent Tunworth. And he was an MI6 asset working in Libya, travelling basically between Libya and the UK. And he was given money, lots of moolah, lots of dosh, to get rid of Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. That was staggering stuff, that. As a revelation, that the guy blamed with the arena bombing, killing all of these youngsters when they went to see this concert. Don't start with the bombing never happened and all, because I know there are people listening to this programme who, they never believe any bombings ever happen. Everything is a hoax. And I'm not dismissing any possibility. I keep my mind open to everything. But not everything can be a hoax, right? There are times, right, when Manchurian candidates, right, are sent into crowded places, right, and they either shoot people or they kill people. This is a fact. Now, the Boston Marathon bombing, yeah, that stinks to high heaven. That looks, well, stink to me. In terms of, I've seen people make a very good argument that that was actually a hoax. But not everything is. And I've spoken to a couple of people whom I know, whom work in triage, who work in accident and emergency, and they worked on the night of the arena bombing. And they dealt with some people in pretty bad ways. So I'm willing to believe that a bomb went off at the arena in the foyer and killed and injured some people. But what's amazing about that is they're opening the inquiry into it today in Manchester. And they're starting with the premise that Salman Abedi did do it, and his brother was in cahoots with him, his Libyan-based brother, but there won't be a mention of the fact that his father was a UK intelligence agency asset. And that is not to be punning my way through the radio show today. That is bombshell information. It's also known that when Salman Abedi was coming back to Manchester, and amazingly enough, I lived in Fallowfield in Manchester, and they told me that Salman Abedi lived in a house less than half a kilometre from my front door, meaning a 3 to 4 minute walk away. And if you've listened to this programme long enough, you will remember me saying that I went down there and spoke to some Libyan people there, and they weren't having any of it. They weren't having any of it, that Salman Abedi did this. They wouldn't believe it. Some of them said they never knew the guy. Others said we knew him, we met him at the mosque, and we're not having it. We don't believe this guy did such a thing, unspeakable thing. But his father, of course, being the MI6 asset, is a huge thing. And I doubt this coming... They're saying this inquiry in Manchester is likely to report in the spring of next year, which is a few months away. Obviously, 6 or 7, 8 months away. I doubt there'll be any mention of his dad or the fact that he worked for MI6. 20 minutes to the top of the hour. We won't have Catherine, by the looks of it. Here's music from the Smashing Pumpkins, and a tune we haven't heard for a while. I love this tune. It's 1979 on the Richie Allen Radio Show. Back with more news and more waffle in a minute. Love a bit of waffle, me. Smashing Pumpkins, 1979. Here's an interesting thing. I was contacted by a number of people over the weekend about Sean Atwood. Now, Sean Atwood has been on my radio programmes for a few years to talk about his own remarkable story as a trader turned ecstasy dealer who spent several years in some of America's toughest prisons. Really interesting guy, Sean, and he has done a lot over the years, going around to schools to talk about drugs, but also talking about literature and writing. And I've had him on to talk about that, and also to talk about true crime. Sean has been on with me to talk about the Dassey family. Of course, Stephen and Brendan Dassey, the Making a Murderer series, which gripped us all over the years. I don't see very much of what other people do because I'm very busy. I'd love to have the time to watch people who come on the programme. Now, I do hear a bit of Maria Heller, of course I do. I do catch a bit of Gerald Salente. I listen to a bit of Spiro, of course. I love Spiro. And I could name a few more, but I don't have much time because this is a daily programme and I don't have any time. And then when I'm off at the weekend, I hear, oh, Sean Atwood had a good interview with a guy or somebody else, and I just don't have the energy. So I miss out on some good content. I'm pretty sure of it. But when I say I don't listen to people, it sometimes gets misconstrued. Oh, that arrogant bastard doesn't... No, it's not that. Believe me. And when I listen to the content of my future guests, like I might have a guest on tomorrow, and I listen to their output, I'm often pleasantly surprised by how good it is and how interesting and engaging it is. So I don't hear very much. And I know that Sean Atwood of late has been interviewing the victims of paedophilia. Excuse me, including the victims of satanic paedophilia. But he's taken a bit of flack of late. And allegations have been made about him. Allegations that suggest that he has had an inappropriate relationship with a woman featured on one of his podcasts. A woman called Callie. And a couple of videos surfaced of Sean seemingly behaving inappropriately around this woman, Callie, who is a victim of paedophilia. And he got a lot of stick for it. And I saw one or two bits and pieces. And I reached out to Sean and I said, because I've known him and because I don't ignore my listeners, I said, listen, you're getting a bit of flack here. What's going on? And he sent me a statement, and I'll read the statement. And outside of that, I'm not going to pursue it any further because I don't know what's going on. And it's really none of my business. Sean has never been on my programme to talk about paedophilia, satanic or otherwise. He's been on to talk about Epstein, right? Well, you've contradicted yourself, Paulie. Yes. He's been on to talk about his interest in the Epstein Ghislaine Maxwell story, and he's talked to me about that and how he's read that. But in terms of his own work, interviewing people who've been abused, he's not really come on to me to talk about that. And I also have a conflict of interest because Sean these days works with somebody whom I've had a lot to say about in the past. So anything I say anyway is going to be perceived as biased. You know what I'm talking about. He works with a woman who is based in London, one of the most deplorable human beings that anybody connected with TPV in London ever had to deal with. A horrible human being whom caused chaos at the People's Voice in London to the point where nobody would work with her. People left, people resigned, and in the end she had to be privately dressed down by David Icke and by others in such a way that would mean that she would leave. And when she did leave, she made baseless allegations, libelous allegations, about the money that was being donated to the People's Voice. It was really a case of hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. She made allegations about Icke. She made allegations about people working there. She said things about me. I went to a solicitor and said, bury that bitch. Bury her. And a solicitor said, the problem is, Richie, she's potless. She's useless. There's no point in pursuing her. She's not got any money. She's the Truther Industrial Complex incarnate. You know what I'm talking about. I won't mention her name. She's dreadful. She used to be shacked up with a guy, a convicted armed robber, a black guy, whom after she was removed from the People's Voice, used to come around and hang around outside the studios attempting to intimidate the employees. This woman is vile. So I can't really say too much about what's going on with Sean Atwood because I'll be accused of having a conflict of interest. And it might be true. Right. But anyway, Sean sent me a statement. This has been all over the Truther Industrial Complex circles. And of course, I don't have anything to do with the Truther Industrial Complex. But Sean has been accused of behaving very inappropriately around a sex abuse victim. I asked him for a comment on it or even to come on with me. He said he won't come on, but he's very polite and he sent me a statement. He said the woman in the reenactments has hunted paedophiles and was enthusiastic about the prank. Now let me read this again. Let me read this again from the start. Sean said to me today, Sean Atwood, and this will be the end of it as far as I'm concerned. Attempting to destroy a troll who had been hounding my podcast guests, including victims of paedophilia. I orchestrated a distasteful prank, and I apologise to anyone offended. The woman in the reenactments has hunted paedophiles and was enthusiastic about the prank because she had been a victim of paedophilia trafficking, and the troll was urging people to have social services called and her son taken away. I had ignored the troll for a year, but attacks on victims of paedophilia and trafficking made me snap, and I did something foolish. End of statement by Sean Atwood, and that ends my interest in it. But you contacted me in such decent numbers over the last few days to ask me to look into it. I've asked him about it. That's what he said. It's difficult for me because of the woman I mentioned that he works with. Anything I say is going to be seen as having a go at her. Believe me, it isn't. She is wretched, worthless. I don't give her a second thought. Only now because of this incident. So you make of it what you will, and maybe others will pursue it. Maybe Sean Atwood will say more on it in the future. Maybe Sean Atwood won't. I don't care. I'm ending my interest right now in that. Okay. And I'm not being harsh on the person I'm referring to either. I'm being kind. Believe you me. Right, where are we? We're about ready to close down, I think, today. I want to mention again, in the event you didn't hear me earlier on, I will be joined by Maria Heller live from Arizona on tomorrow's programme. Looking forward to that. And as usual, I don't have the bloody diary, but I've got a pretty full schedule this week, and I also wanted to try and fit in a phone in this week. I might try and do a phone in on Thursday, if Thursday is possible. If I've not booked guests in, that is. Just to let you know again, Vernon Coleman, I'm saying this because it's really important. He's not uploading to YouTube anymore. He's put the first upload of on his new channel on brandnewtube.com, and within a couple of weeks' time he will start the next season, as it were, of An Old Man in a Chair, and it'll be on Brand New Tube. And in the meantime, every Monday at 5:30, and maybe even beyond, it's up to him. I'm happy to have him every Monday, because obviously the effects of the lockdown, the plans of those who put the lockdown in place, the WHO, Bill Gates, his lackeys, Patrick Vallance, Chris Whitty, their lackeys, Boris Johnson and Jimmy Krankie, this is not going to end. So I think it'll be a vital resource, I think, in coming weeks, that we have Vernon on at 5:30 every Monday. I'm glad that he agreed to do that. So that's going to be every Monday. But in the meantime, Brand New Tube is where you'll find him. And I've really got very little else to say, so I'm going to do an early. I've got 6-7 minutes to go, but I'm going to go anyway. We were due to have Catherine Blakelock on the programme. Sadly, no sign of Catherine. I have no idea why. I'm sure there's a good reason. If there is a good reason, we'll get her back on this week. If there isn't, you won't be hearing her on this programme again. That's pretty much how it goes. You see, in media. Alrighty then. You can contact the programme at any time by dropping an email to me through the contact section of richieallen.co.uk. I did mention pre my holiday that the website will be relaunched. It will be. My great pal Hayden Hewitt is doing sterling work, not just on our website but on other websites as well. So probably in a week, 10 days maybe, he'll press the go button and we will have a brand new website, and it's looking good. It's very user friendly, very fresh, very vibrant. And one of the things I'm looking to do, not to put any extra work on myself, I won't be putting too much extra work on myself, but I will be putting articles on there. I like writing. I like writing when the mood takes me, when I've got something to say. And I'm not fishing for compliments here now. I'm no Jean Ann Crowley now when it comes to writing. You know, I'm no Bernays when it comes to writing. God, no. I'm no Robert Fisk when it comes to writing, but I like writing. I like spewing out my thoughts on a keyboard. So I will be putting articles on there, and we'll do a bit more with the website then. Maybe we've done in the past. Alrighty. Okay, I'm going out with this. It's lazy, this. I'm sorry, but it's the handiest bit of music I've got. I've been a bit discombobulated there trying to see where Catherine Blakelock was at, but I've not managed to get her. We'll be back tomorrow at 5. In the meantime, do check out our friends. Check out Spiro Skouras on YouTube. Check out Trigger Warning on youtube.com/Trigger Warning TV. The Maria Heller Show, of course, maria.net. People we like to listen to on this programme are happy to endorse. And Vernon Coleman, of course, on YouTube and Brand New Tube. Well, that has been Monday's Richie Allen Radio Show. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.